Sorry if there was a strange noise there. That was my stomach.
That's why I'm
just joining in. She loved it too.
I'm really hungry.
Are you hungry as well, Rob?
Really hungry.
Have you not eaten?
No.
What's wrong with you both?
Someone was reading a book.
Here, read this. The Thicket by Joe R. Lansdale and Letter from an Unknown Woman by Stefan Zweig. Hello and welcome to Here, Read This, a full-host, 2 books and lots of chat podcast. My name's Gavin, and with me today are Kate from Adventures with Words.
Hello.
Rob from Adventures with Words.
Hello.
And Simon from Savage Reads.
Hello.
I know who you're from, but you're also from, other things as...
The Readers, for example, that you used to host, Gav.
Did you? Really? That was so long ago.
We've worked together before.
At least you met.
I'm not sure.
Only twice.
So this is a podcast all about 2 books, one old and one new. We always start with the new book. So the first book we're looking at is The Thicket by Joe R. Lansdale. And basically it's a Western story. It's my choice. And I'm here to sell it to you a little bit because I chose it. And I think I chose a good one. Basically, Jack Parker knows all too well how treacherous life can be. His parents did not survive a smallpox epidemic. His grandfather was murdered. Now his sister Lula has been kidnapped by a bank robber. Along with a bounty hunter called Shorty, who's a dwarf, with a chip on his shoulder, and Eustace, a grave-digging son of an ex-slave, Jack sets off to rescue Lula. The turn of the century Texas is a quest that may turn out to be dangerous. There's murderous outlaws, and basically it's kind of quite gritty. And I'm just wondering, we'll go around and see what everybody thought of it, starting with Simon.
I liked it.
Ooh.
I've got a couple of caveats, but I'll come up with those later.
Kate?
I thought it was really good, actually. There were parts that I thought were quite funny. I really liked the narration.
Ooh, Rob?
I wasn't looking forward to reading this, but I really enjoyed it.
Were you not?
Sorry?
Were you not looking forward to it?
I don't really like westerns.
Well, no, neither do I, so it's interesting. And it had a horse on the cover.
Yeah?
Yeah, so I really I put it off. But I really enjoyed it, actually.
See, I chose it because I've read some of his crime stuff, and he does a zombie western as well. He wrote, and he also did Baba Hotep. You know the
right, yes, I know
the story that's based on.
Means nothing to me.
No, that doesn't mean anything to me.
It was a film with Bruce Campbell.
And he also wrote something with Zeppelins in it, so I could have chosen that for Simon, but I didn't. I don't know. How would you cope with Zeppelin, Simon?
I don't know what a Zeppelin is.
It's those big.
It's a big hot air balloon thing. The airship.
Oh, I'm all right with that. It's not technically a boat.
It's got a boat on the bottom.
Yeah, but it's in the air, so it doesn't matter.
So
this is going really well.
It had a horse on the front, but it wasn't a floating admiral.
This is the most rambling episode I've ever taken part in.
Well, I'm in a rambly sort of mood. Though I tweeted you I messaged you and said it's a bit raw at the start to Simon.
No, because we don't talk about the books offline.
Oh, did we not? No, all I said was a bit raw to start with. That's the only thing I said to you is a bit raw to start with. And the opening is quite gruesome. I was just wondering if that set the tone for the book at the start.
Shall I field this one? I thought it was great. I thought there were bits that were quite gruesome where right from the off, in the section that Gav's talking about is the bit where the grandpa who's travelling with Jack and Lula because their parents have died and he's going to take them off to live with their aunt, but they end up starting an argument with a very angry man as they're being ferried across the river, and it turns into a fight, and that turns into all sorts of chaos, and there's a twister that comes down the river and so on and so on. But I just thought the way that he writes the action is really good, and some people write fight scenes and it's like, and then this person hit this person, and then this, and it's all just, it's very dull. But I think the way that he deals with those fight scenes is brilliant, and it's sort of explained and described in quite a lot of detail, but without actually being too gratuitous. So you know exactly what's happened, but I didn't feel grossed out at any point. I don't know about anyone else.
I didn't feel that grossed out because I think, I'm not going to give away the ending, but I did feel very grossed out by the ending, and that was one slight problem I had. I thought it went too far at a couple of points, but obviously we're not going to talk about that bit. Well, we might do, but not say, obviously give anything away. But at the beginning, I didn't find it that, even the talk of all the smallpox and all of that, which has grim moments to it, I didn't find that particularly grim. And actually, the whole way through, because you had said it was a bit raw to start off with, and I just thought, is it? Because it wasn't that full on for me. I just thought, well, I've read way worse in most crime novels.
I just think it's a tonal thing, though, because it kind of, it's one that, and each chapter goes from, and then kind of a cliffhanger, and then this happened. It's kind of, there's no slowing down with it. Even though there are slow moments, and there are some philosophies in it, is the mix of characters, when they're all kind of together. It's kind of, it's like a quest. It's a big quest novel for me. So did you like the mix of characters?
I did. I thought that they were, it was just an interesting, it was literally like, you said, like a mix. They weren't the same. It was just sort of an oddball, and you kind of have to work out how they were going to get on with each other. And as they sort of went along on their sort of journey, and it was also seeing how people reacted to them as they were going along. A midget and a hog going down the road together, sort of thing.
And a 6 foot odd, big muscly black guy, and then
Jack's quite skinny, I thought.
Jack's a skinny redhead.
Well, he's also a kind of he's a gangly teenager, isn't he? Jimmy C is a former prostitute, or still a bit of a prostitute. We don't know how that's going to go as it goes on. But I thought that was also very clever because, basically Jack's left on his own pretty early on, without giving any spoilers away. And it's how he sort of befriends these random characters, and you can't tell. It's quite interesting at the beginning. I thought what I liked that Joe R. Lansdale does is, one, gives you characters you're not sure you can trust. Mm-hmm. So even though they say they might help, there's a reason why they're going to help, but there also might be motives behind that, because each character's got quite an interesting backstory, which I liked. But also I found that even though they kind of were these quirky, I felt like it was designed to be a rip-roaring yarn, so it had to have these kind of quirky, crazy characters, but they were fully formed. They weren't just cartoons. I thought they had really interesting backstories, and I think his characterization is probably one of the strongest things that he does.
I definitely agree with that. It reminded me a bit of reading something like Cold Mountain.
I thought of The Princess Bride. I don't know why I kept thinking of The Princess Bride.
There were so many different things. So, on the one hand, you've got Cold Mountain, which, again, is set in the kind of American wilderness sort of thing, and it's a journey across the land to get back to someone in that case. But the characters that he comes across are they're quite weird, but they're just on this side of believable, if that makes sense. And then also things like The Princess Bride, where he's running after the people to rescue Buttercup, and then also it made me think of Guardians of the Galaxy, where there's the kind of bunch of people, and they're all a bit renegade and rascally, and they've all got kind of bad things they might have done in their past, but they're sort of good people underneath. And I thought it was such an interesting mixture. Gav, as Gav said, there are bits where it kind of goes off and tells you a bit more about the reasons behind, and it goes off and tells you people's backstories. But the backstories are so interesting that you don't mind the fact that you're taking a bit of a break from the narrative. And actually, one of the characters' backstories had me welling up, even though it's really not that kind of book, but it was just so sad and awful. I thought it was great. Really good.
It's very funny, isn't it? That's the thing that made me laugh. It did make me laugh a lot. Or chuckle.
Even the because it's funny in violence as well, which is probably a bad thing. But...
Well, everybody's seen Pulp Fiction, right? Mm-hmm. And that scene when he accidentally shoots the guy in the back of the car?
Yeah.
And I've never laughed at a scene that loudly. Nobody else laughed at the cinema, but I laughed really, really loud because it was this horrible violence, but it was funny. And that's kind of what runs through it.
It's shocking and it's unexpected.
But
and
it still
kind
makes...
of takes the sting out of it a bit. Yeah, exactly. Because you're so surprised.
But I felt that The Thicket had that running through it. It had this kind of... And it's interesting, like Rob was saying, I wasn't looking forward to Western. I wasn't sure what to expect from a modern Western. I think it was my slight issue, bar the horse.
I think actually the cover sets the tone wrong because it's such a dark cover.
Yeah, it looks very forbidding.
It looks very serious. I think.
Yeah,
That's what
it is quite a dark book, though.
Yeah.
Sorry,
it's not serious, though. But it's not. No, but it's not serious.
I think it makes it look like it's going to be like The Road or something.
What were you going to say, Rob?
It's described as hellish and hilarious, which I think does sum that up quite well.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just the front. I'm just thinking of the front with the horse and the lonely horse. It kind of, it's kind of a bit like the fog on the cover, and you think, oh, it's just going to be a serious kind of.
I think my only slight thing with it was it had that lovely pace of as it built up and you're quite thrilled, and then it did that thing that I think sometimes books do. I know it has to because of the genre it is probably, but the ending almost happened too fast. I wanted the ending to sort of be dragged out a bit more, even though it was huge. Is
there nowhere to go though? I think with a kind of a western. I'm thinking of a western. The build-up is all the.
Well, without being a spoiler, you're going to get a shootout at some point. It's a western.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. The two people that cross town. There's not a lot more you can go once you build up to a shootout. There's not a lot you can.
Well, it did have a slightly added element of the four-legged creature, which I quite liked. It was quite unexpected for me.
Yeah, not the hog for once.
Not the hog, the other.
But another creature, which I thought was really interesting. But I think I do know what you mean, Simon. But I wondered, and perhaps it's a good job it didn't because I only just finished reading it in time. But I kind of wanted the journey to keep going because I was really enjoying spending time with those characters. They were so interesting, and I felt like there was so much more to find out about them. But then, if it had gone on for longer, maybe actually it would have felt drawn out. And I think it ended at the right place, but it's almost a bit like A Month in the Country, that I was sad when it finished, but because it was so great, not because there was actually more.
I was a little bit disappointed that it had a sort of epilogue. Yeah. Which rounded it off.
It didn't need that.
Because I would have happily read more with these characters.
Well, that's the thing. I was umming and ahhing, and I don't know if this is what you're alluding to, Rob. I thought it could be a series because I was thinking, they could have another adventure now. Like, is somebody going to nick off with all of their, earnings or something like? You know what I mean? I was just like, what I would have, and I would read a series of it. I mean, I think it is, and this is again me being really, really, really picky. I'll remember it because it's a Western. And I don't read those very often, but it's not the sort of book I'm going to be going to for. It made me have. Other than it, I had a really escapist, fun time with it.
Yeah.
Even the philosophies didn't quite sit. They didn't make me go, "Ooh, that's changed my mind on blah blah blah." But it's not that sort of book.
No,
it is the sort of book that you read, you enjoy it, you say, "Oh, that was really good," and you have an adventure. And it is. I genuinely think it's a proper adventure story. It reminds me of the sort of books that I would have read in my teenage years, in that sort of element of, obviously not country and westerns with horses, but in terms of a gang of people going. And also, the other thing that I like about them is they're all underdogs.
Yes.
But this sort of gang mentality of, in a good way, we're going to sort out a problem, we're going to go off on an adventure, and we're just going to see what happens. And I really like that about it.
Because he grows up throughout it as well. The adventure changes the main character.
Well, it certainly does when he meets Jimmy Sue. Who's already met another member of his family.
I'm just curious because it's a first-person tale, and he's obviously retelling a story as you read it because there's moments where he's got to be telling you a story. And I was wondering if that takes any of the danger out of it.
A little bit.
I don't think so because I've read a book like that before where the person was dead.
Oh, true.
Yeah, I've read one where they die. Yeah, where they die.
Yeah, so. And they're telling it from beyond the grave. So I don't count my chickens. It could have, or hogs or whatever.
I didn't really. No, it didn't bother me. I mean, the time he does the clever thing where he says, "Oh, I'm not sure if I'm remembering it properly," and all sorts of things. I think it it provided the ending that I thought it was going to have. But I think having the first person narration, normally I don't trust them, but I think because I liked Jack so much, I did trust him as a narrator.
See, I like first. That's why I loathe when you can have an unreliable narrator, because
I love unreliable narrators.
But I enjoy first person because it rips, because of that intensity that he's describing everybody in their relationships, and you kind of lose yourself in him and have the adventure, whereas you're not flipping from person to person, or and he does a really rounded thing of giving all the characters their sort of spotlight. The bad guys, it's like that episode of Red Dwarf. Have you seen the Red Dwarf one with the cowboys in it?
Yeah. The dog
I've
program.
not watched Red Dwarf.
Oh well, we'll come back
I shouldn't
to that.
I shouldn't be in your gang because I haven't watched Red Dwarf and I haven't seen whatever that David Bowie film is, and I'm just I just need to be thrown out. But can I just say the bad guys I think were actually probably the weakest point. They did seem to just be kind of caricatures there to be baddies.
They were just bad.
Yeah.
They would show the excesses that you could have, I guess.
Yeah, and you didn't really. There are a couple of times where you do find out a bit more. There's one particular time where you find out a bit more about them and what they're capable of. And I think if I were to make criticisms, even though I did really enjoy it, it might have been helpful to have a bit more earlier on about them. To kind of make them a bit more rounded, and a lot of the time it's actually only one of the gang that they're chasing because
it's Fatty, isn't it?
Yeah,
Fatty, because they lose the other guys, they split up, so they're following this one person, and I think it would have been helpful to have a bit more to put them in context. But I mean, even with that, the rest of it is so good that it kind of bowled me along anyway.
It does,
because it was the kind of quest bit that was really fun. But yeah, it would have been good to have a bit more context.
It does read as if he's making it up as he goes along in some
bit,
ways,
but not in a bad way.
Not for a bad way at all. It is kind of like, well, what's he going to do next, and what's he going to do next, and where they're going to go next, and what, because you.
I mean, in terms of the way it's written, rather than the character, you mean?
Yeah, or both, because it's like he sets them up like an unknown adventure.
Yeah.
And you pick up, it's like a bit like Wizard of Oz, if we're going for.
Oh, blimey.
I would be really intrigued to read. I'm just going to try and plough on here to read, an interview with Joel Lansdale and find out how he does. Because, there's this whole thing about, are you a planner or a pantser, where you just fly by the seat of your pants or whatever. And it may be that he's actually a planner and he does plan things out, and it's just because the things that happen to them are a bit crazy that it feels unplanned.
Yeah.
But I'd be really interested to find out, because I thought it felt very natural. I mean, there's a quote on the front of the edition that we've got that says it reads like a dark version of the adventures of Tom Sawyer and feels like a Coen Brothers movie. I suppose, the Tom Sawyer bit is, I guess, because it's a young man travelling through America, and it's kind of coming of age thing. But the Coen Brothers movie reference feels very right to me. I mean, I don't know if everyone's seen Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, for example, something like that.
Simon.
No, I have.
Oh, you have? Oh, good.
Yeah.
It's really good.
I've actually seen a film.
Yay! But it's that kind of thing where you just get that feeling that it's almost like reading a kind of medieval European story where once you get out of town, anything can happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's that sort of almost slightly magical realist thing. If you're not quite sure whether this person is real or if it's the way that the person has remembered them, or there's something just very wild and strange.
They do have that. You are right, because the first two companions he picks up, Shorty and Eugene.
Eustace.
Yes, Eugene.
Eustace.
Eustace is the one that I kept thinking was Jamie Foxx in Django Unchained, which is weirdly a western and one of my favourite films.
It's a good film.
So we're learning strange things about you, Simon. You like westerns.
There's always something strange to learn. Yeah, it's got horses in it.
And this book is a boat, the ferry.
Yeah, there's a boat and horse, lots of riding horses.
Okay, I did have a question though. The female characters.
Yeah.
What you had to go there?
Well, no, because I think it's a fair point.
No, it is a fair point. Rob, it's something that because of the genre.
I hope the microphone picked up what Rob said. Then that's all I'm saying.
You'll see.
When he's got a black eye from Kate.
Genre, I guess quite often you don't expect to have many female characters, and it is the case that one female character is basically absent, but she's the damsel in distress. Just kind of, okay, fair enough. But you do have another female character, Jimmy Sue, who, despite her first name, is a woman, and she was pretty cool. I thought I quite enjoyed her, and she's got a very practical way of looking at the world, which I guess in her profession, which is the oldest one there is, you probably have to have.
She's a shepherd.
Yes. And she has been a victim, but she decides to take control of the situation. She decides to sort of make a break for it and have a new start. And I liked her character, but I mean, I suppose it's in the nature of the beast that there just aren't very many female characters in westerns, and I think it's a problem with the genre as a whole rather than a problem with this book, I felt.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you ever watched Deadwood, which was set during the Gold Rush, that felt. It had Lovejoy off the telly swearing.
No, I've definitely not watched it then.
No, I wouldn't remember that.
Not Tim Lovejoy, the other Lovejoy.
Yeah, no, I know who you mean, with the antiques.
Yeah.
Target reference, kids.
So yeah, this felt very authentic to that, just in the way that women were treated. So yes, it's wrong, but it felt authentic at the time.
I think that's the thing, that you can't expect people to completely chuck out what was historically accurate for the time, just because nowadays we know that isn't appropriate. I mean, I wouldn't expect someone to write a sort of historically, this world historically set novel and make all the women powerful landowners and in charge of the because they weren't. I mean, if it's a fantasy.
Have you not seen that Bad Girls film with Sharon Stone and Andy McDowell when they're cowgirls taking over the world? But it's interesting you mentioned that, though, with the historical thing, because there was one other thing that did jar with me every so often, and it's the use of the N-word, which I won't go into too much, but that did at one point, when it was used 3 times within a couple of paragraphs, I was like, I'm going to have a massive problem with that. I don't care about the gratuitous violence. But then I had to sit there and think, he's setting it in that time.
Yeah.
But that was the only time that annoyed me, because I thought, you are setting in that time, but it's clearly a modern book. Yeah. I'm not saying that he's obviously a racist, but what I'm saying is, I understand that at the time racism was rife and there was the class and colour divide, but it just jarred on me a tiny bit.
But it's good that it jarred, though. I think.
Yeah. They challenge it, but there's a time where they go into a trading post and the person says, "We don't serve and women or whatever, or hogs, I think, or something. I don't know." Hogs. And he's like, "Well, you do now."
Yeah. Oh no, I think that was what was good with the character of Eustace, but I just think it was that one little moment where I thought, you're a modern novel, you don't need to do that.
Well, do you know what?
But then it jarred on me, so it was a good thing. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's good that it jars with us, because it's not something that anyone would go around saying now. Or I hope they wouldn't, or maybe they would in some places still. I don't know, but they shouldn't. But it is historical. This is set. Well, I mean, they start to mention cars. I couldn't remember off the top of my head when Ford started making the Model T, but
1904, 1910.
Yeah, so it's well over 100 years ago, and probably less than 50 years ago, not most, but quite a lot of white people in the southern states of America still said that on a regular basis. So I think we perhaps are in a different position being in the UK. I don't think people did continue using that language for as long here as they did in America.
1910 they still do, because it's what jars with me about horror, historical crime fiction, if you get that kind of era with. But,
absolutely. And I mean, but I suppose perhaps I'm less worried about it because I think as long as you look back on it with a modern attitude to it, you can accept that people did use it as normal. And I mean, when you've stood in front of 32 relatively well-off white teenagers and had to read out bits of Mice and Men, you can't be too precious about that when it's in a work of fiction. Don't know if anyone else has actually read that, but that's got quite a few N-bombs in it. So,
see, on that serious note, we started off on a light,
But it's got the shades of that in the book, hasn't it? It's got some light shades, it's got dark shades, it's got serious shades, it's got fun shades.
So I was thinking, to sort of round off this section, because it sounds like a good place to do it, would you recommend it as a book club book, Simon?
Yeah, I would, because I think it's interesting. I said that it's one of those books that you read and you sort of just enjoy it and then off you go. But actually, there's been a lot of stuff we've managed to talk about from it, and I wasn't sure there would be when I finished it, but there is. So yes, I would, and I'd just recommend it as a read. Full stop, really.
Rob?
Yes, I would. I think it zips along. It's got cliffhangers at every chapter. It's got a very interesting cast, and I think anyone who reads it will generally want to find out what happens at the end.
Kate?
Yeah, I definitely agree with both these guys. I thought it was a really fun read. I think there are interesting issues that it raises. I think it's got good stuff about the American wilderness. I think it's got a good adventure, and I'm one for adventures. I think it's a really good fun book and lots to talk about.
See, I totally agree. Thank God I chose it. Because this is a good one for me.
This is redemption, Gav. Well done.
But I think this is the first one for ages that we've all enjoyed.
Yes.
Yeah.
And all finished.
In fact, probably since A Month in the Country.
Could well be, actually. That was quite a while ago.
Yeah.
Speaking of things we've enjoyed and want to share, the next section, it just is books we've all been reading and want to sort of share with you. Now, I'm going to start because it kind of folds in. Speaking of unfinished, though, I've been reading Trigger Warning by Neil Gaiman, who has a brilliant introduction because he's slightly worried that we're going to start putting sort of warnings on books, which is okay for kids I think personally, I think it's okay for children if you're putting age ranges on there, so the reading level of what can be, what your child may or may not want to read, especially because they'll always try and read older. So at least it might encourage them to read something older, but it shouldn't be there to censor. It should be there to sort of give an idea of how hard something might be to read. But he's a bit worried that we're going to start, saying, well, this may contain fruit, nuts, and everything else that you're not allowed to eat on planes anymore. But I was reading some of the stories, and I like Neil Gaiman's short fiction a bit better than his longer fiction. I get shouted at by people for that, because he kind of gives you that moment and you think, oh wow, because the opening story is somebody walking around a maze, and that's all I'm going to say because that spoils it, but it's a burnt down maze, but it's that stepping over the threshold and what happens when you step over the threshold and it takes you away from where you are. So I think a combination of it's new short fiction by Neil Gaiman, which is always good for me, and the fact that he's sort of challenging people's expectations, so I'm a bit worried to go a bit further to see if he's actually going to start pushing some buttons on purpose. But we'll see. Kate, what have you been reading?
I have been mainly reading things for kind of specific purposes. For example, I read a book called The Earth is Singing by Vanessa Curtis, which was because I had a chapter and it's going to be on the next Young Adult podcast for Adventures of Words. So I'm not going to say too much about that. But in amongst all of this, I read 2 fantasy books, and I haven't read any proper fantasy for ages, so that was quite good fun. The first one I read was called Moth and Spark, and I've temporarily forgotten who wrote it, but I'm sure people can look it up online. I don't know there's many called that. But that was billed as kind of Game of Thrones meets Pride and Prejudice, because there are dragons, and there's also a lot of things about what class you're in and what you're allowed to do, and that people who are higher class shouldn't mix with people who are lower class. So it's a bit like kind of society and manners and that side of things. But really, I didn't think it was as much like that, as almost more like a kind of King Arthur type thing. And it was, and it wasn't as political as Game of Thrones, and it was much more magical. And it was also much more serious. I mean, like Pride and Prejudice is quite funny, I think. It wasn't really fun. It was very serious. But I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very good. And the other thing that I read was The Invisible Library by Genevieve Cogman. And I don't know, I'm kind of undecided about that, whether I like it or not, because I'm not sure whether it was just because I read it after Moth and Spark, which is very serious, and The Invisible Library isn't at all. It's very fast-paced. It's almost like a kind of steampunk meets magic meets spy thriller type thing. It just wasn't what I expected, which is my fault, not the book's fault. But I think I kind of came at it from the wrong angle. And it took me, by the end of it, I was enjoying it. But at the beginning, it really took me a long while to get into it. But I think, yeah, as I said, it's my fault rather than the book's fault. I think it's actually really well written. So there we go. So that's what I've been reading.
Okay, Rob.
The last thing I read was
wrote as well.
Yeah, graphic novel, quite a hefty one. It's Sculptor by Scott McCloud, and it's self-contained story, and it's to do with a sculptor.
Hence the title. Yeah.
Called David, who he's sort of had a brief moment of fame, but he's lost it, and he makes a deal with death, who comes to him in the form of his uncle Harry, which is that he can have the power to create magnificent art, but he only has 200 days to live, and he can sculpt things out of bricks. He can mold the world around him, and it's basically about sacrificing your life for the name of sort of art. And I read it very quickly. I read it in almost one go, which I don't normally do with graphic novels. But I really enjoyed it. It's quite touching, quite sad. It's written and illustrated by Scott McCloud, and it really sort of gets you. There's entire pages with no dialogue, and you're just following the story along. And David falls in love at the wrong time, and I really enjoyed it actually. This is his first sort of self-contained sort of bit of fiction. He's done previous books, sort of understanding comics.
Yeah, because I saw his artwork. I like his artwork. I didn't realise that it's his first sort of full-length work.
Yes.
Go on.
No, I'd really recommend it. But yeah.
And that leaves Simon.
I'm going to do a Kate and cheat and say two. So one is one book that I've read that I liked for about the first 500 pages and then hated for about the last 80 was Casual Vacancy by an unknown author called J.K. Rowling, which I'm sure none of you have heard of. And this was like her first foray into adult fiction, although not 50 Shades of Grey way, like literature for adults, sorry. But I think everybody in the world pretty much has either read it or tried to read it. And it's interesting. It's about a vacancy that comes up on a council in a town in the UK. And it's funny because instantly I was like, oh, that's a bit boring, council politics, how interesting. But she's very clever because she looks at how there's a place called I've forgotten the name of it now. That's really, really not helpful. The Fields, and it's kind of a council estate, and it's got like a drug rehabilitation centre and all these sort of things. And so she looks at class because the people of Pagford don't want that to be part of their boundary. They want it to be passed over to the city that's nearby, and so the whole book has that going through it. I mean, and it was interesting because as I was reading it for the first, like I said, 500 pages, I loved it because you were going behind people's front doors and behind the curtains and finding out all their secrets. And also I found the class thing really interesting because obviously J.K. Rowling used to be not as rich as she is now. And initially I was like, oh, former, working class millionaire J.K. Rowling is writing a book about the working class people. That's really good. And it's going to, I think I was talking to you about it, Rob. It's a book that kind of is set out to really annoy anyone who reads the Daily Mail, who deserves to be annoyed and shouldn't be listening to this podcast if they're offended. So, sorry, just thought I'd put that out there. But then after there was something coming. I was like, please don't do it. Please don't do it. It's the most obvious thing you could do and don't do it. And she did it. and then she did something even worse about a chapter later, and I just thought, I've gone from really quite enjoying this book to absolutely hating it, and then suddenly I was like, this is definitely written by millionaire J.K. Rowling, not. So that was my reaction to that, which is quite awkward because she's coming on. You wrote the book to talk about it. She's not really.
On that note, though, Simon, did you read that they're changing the ending for the?
Yes, they are, and I can see why.
Right.
That was my problem with it.
Yeah.
But on a happier note, and I want to mention this because this is going to surprise Gav even more than me liking cowboys. The other book I'd recommend is Grasshopper Jungle by Andrew Smith, which is firstly young adult, and secondly is sort of about love, huge, giant, horny grasshoppers, and the end of the world.
Didn't you read something about bees the other day as well?
And bees, yeah, I mentioned that last month.
I know, so bees and grasshoppers and horses.
I'm having an insect year.
And horses are
I'm not converted to horses, and I'm not converted to boats because I had to read Ernest Hemingway's Old Man and the Sea, and that was solely on a boat. Yeah, it's short.
Big print.
But this Grasshopper Jungle is brilliant, and what I think I love about it is it's... A lot of people have said it's really pro-LGBT things for young adults, but actually I don't think it's about that. I think it's just about love and friendship and what that means at the end of the world when horny grasshoppers are chasing you and want to eat you and kill you. And I really, 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 really liked it.
So I think everyone should read that book.
I think everyone should read that book.
So I think it's time to move on the note of...
horny grasshoppers.
Yeah, I can't say it. I can't say it. And we'll move on to Kate, seeing as it's Kate's choice that's next, and she's going to talk to us about The Letter of an Unknown Woman by, I gotta say it again, Stephen Zweig.
Very close, very close. So, Stefan Zweig. I'll just go straight in there.
It's all right, Kate. He's Welsh.
No, Kate,
yeah. He was born in 1881 in Vienna into a wealthy Austrian Jewish family. He studied in Berlin. He was known as a poet and translator and then a biographer. And people have probably heard of him more recently because Wes Anderson used some of his, because he wrote lots of short stories, used some of his short stories as the inspiration for his film The Grand Budapest Hotel, which I thought was very good and very funny. But this is a small collection of short stories, which is published by Pushkin Press, and they publish lots of other Stefan Zweig. So if anyone wants to read anything more by him, there's plenty that's been published in these rather nice editions. So this has got 4 stories in it. Letter from an Unknown Woman, which I think is the longest. And then you've got A Story Told in Twilight, The Debt Paid Late, and Forgotten Dreams. So to give you an idea of what those are about, a famous author receives a letter on his 41st birthday. He doesn't know the sender, but still the letter concerns him intimately. Its story is earnest, even piteous, the story of a life lived in service to an unannounced, unnoticed love. So that's obviously Letter from an Unknown Woman. In the other stories in this collection, a young man mistakes the girl he loves for her sister. I did that last time as well. For her sister. 2 erstwhile lovers meet after an age spent apart, and a married woman repays a debt of gratitude. The stories are translated by Anthony Bell, who's a very well-known, well-respected translator, and it says on the back of the book that the stories are celebrated and compelling, expertly paced, laced with empathy, and an unwavering, acute sense of psychological detail. So I wanted to give this a try really because I just heard such good things, and then sort of saw Grand Budapest Hotel. They're not necessarily the kind of things that I would often read, because as I was reading, I was reminded of Gav's thing about how much he loves stories where someone walks to the shop and back thinking about their life. But I thought, you never know, maybe there's 4 stories, maybe we'll find something that we enjoy. So... Simon, what did you think of these stories?
I really, 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 really loved them. I think the last one didn't need to be in it because it's so short. But there was something... It's weird. There was something slightly fairy tale about them. There was something slightly... They just sort of encompassed everything I like in a short story. And even though they do have that slight element of somebody walking to the shops for 90 pages thinking about their lives, there is actually a lot that's going on in there, and his use of language is brilliant. But I'll talk more about that. Sorry, I went on a long time then. I did really like them.
Okay, thank you very much. Rob, what did you think of them?
I liked it as well. I thought it started strong and then sort of tailed off slightly along. But I didn't do the mistake I did last time where I read them all in one go. I did try and actually space them out. I think that works better for me now.
Gav, I hope I haven't sort of preempted anything there, but what did you think of them?
That's enough.
No, I'm just... Yeah. Okay.
The end. No more from Gav.
Gav's going to be quiet now.
No, go on, Gav. What did you really think?
No, because I genuinely want to know.
I started off with I'm quite liking this letter, and I thought it's quite nice. And then I kind of thought, I'll give up woman and get doing something else. So, no, sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. We couldn't possibly be 2 for 2.
So I thought,
Sorry, Kate.
That's all right.
I did think, as a collection, it seemed to me that the one word I could use to sum it up is to do people being obsessed with something.
It's also all about nostalgia of your own life in a weird way, I thought. I mean, I don't know about you guys. I thought Letter from an Unknown Woman as a story was really, 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 really good. Like, it's easily the best story out of the 4 for me.
It's the one that's famous, and it's the one that's got the film. Just to kind of chuck those 2 things in there, it is the one.
Again, I didn't know either of those 2 facts. I came to
yeah.
But he's one of those authors who I've meant to read for ages because people have always said, oh, he's amazing, and I thought he would be too hard work, was why I'd been put off from him, and I found him really easy to read. But actually, weirdly, I think A Story Told in Twilight was my favourite.
I think that was my favourite as well, actually. I
loved the first one, genuinely.
I thought the first one was brilliant, but I would have possibly had the stories in the reverse order if it had been me deciding what order they were going in.
I genuinely wouldn't.
I enjoyed the last one, and
it's like 7 pages, and I'm just like, what's the point? Sorry.
Do you mean the one about the woman who goes to the mountains? And
No. Forgotten Dreams is the final one.
That's not the last one, is it?
It is in my edition.
Oh. Okay.
But it's literally only 7 pages long. It's tiny, and for me, it was just a bit.
Oh yes, it is. Sorry.
I needed some more meat on that one, I think. And I like the one about the woman who goes up the mountains. I thought I didn't see the twist coming, if you could call it a twist, I suppose. I did see the twist coming in the other 2, but partly because the back of the book gives one of them away. But I there was something. It sounds really stupid, but you know, the second one in particular, A Story Told in Twilight, it felt to me like a reverse Cinderella story. I kept thinking of that every time. I kept thinking of Cinderella, but as the prince, as it were, being the one who, yeah.
No, I really enjoyed that one. I thought, as Rob said, I think they're all kind of to do with, on the one hand, kind of passion and obsession, but on the other hand, as you said, so I'm kind of looking back and reflecting, trying to work out what to do about that. But I thought that one had so much passion in it, and I think it was a different flavour, really, if I can say it like that, to the other stories. That the other stories are much more people who are at the end of their lives, from that perspective, looking back and kind of almost like making peace. Whereas this one is a young man not knowing what to do, kind of with like a fever of love. And I think the description and the language that's used is really beautiful. Something that I noticed was that there is a degree of repetition which is used. I think that is just his style.
It's used in all of them, I think.
Yeah, which is there to use for emphasis and used to draw our focus to particular details. And I wondered if that was something that actually kind of got up your nose a bit, Gav.
I found the voices of the characters annoying, so I didn't. The style's fine. I think his. I enjoyed the prose, and I enjoyed. It's the first one really put me off, and I couldn't kind of grasp him after that. I was thinking, you are going to just walk me down the street, aren't you, and just reminisce and get on with it. It doesn't have that. The first one has the first one is a woman's dying.
I can understand why she annoys you. Because we should give a bit more story about each one.
So the first one's a woman dying, and she basically says at one point in this letter, and it's not too much of a spoiler to say, you'll only get this letter if I've died. If I haven't died, I'm going to burn it. but I'm going to tell you all the things that you missed while you were walking around and you were oblivious to me, and this is the effect you had on my life.
But I thought that was really clever.
That in itself is fine. But there is the refrain of, she keeps saying, if I die, and there's I can't remember what the other refrain is. There's one that starts every paragraph.
Or my child, or my child.
Yeah, my child is dying, my child is dying, my child is dying. And because I'm one of those people that kind of gets information in quickly, and I that's why I like the Thicket more, because, I know I got it, I've put you in a little box, and I can't unbox that when, with this, she kind of goes on, and you're thinking, we know.
I think the thing is with that one, because of the way it's, not to give anything away, because of she's telling you her story to a guy who doesn't know her, but she knows him. And as you learn that story, it's quite tragic, but at the same time, there's a point where you think, get a grip. You know what I mean? Come on. And she did annoy me on that aspect, because I just thought, seriously, have you not got the message? You know what I mean? And I just kept... But then there's one thing, and I can't say it because it'll give it away, but it's to do with flowers. That's all I'm going to say, where you think... Okay, that's a massive payoff in a sentence. And it's right at the end of the story. And I thought that was really clever. And actually you've been having this sort of repetitive story, and you've been having this all building up, and it was just that one line that got me. And I was like, well, that's brilliant. If the last line of a story can hit you like that, that's really, really clever. And then with the second one, I think it's interesting because in a story told in Twilight, or I might have said that wrong, it's about a man who, and this is the only thing, I couldn't understand how he couldn't see who she was. Where was she coming from? Because he goes out into the garden, and she sort of just ravishes him at some unknown moment, like unsuspected moment, although obviously he becomes to suspect it, but still she gets him by surprise, and he's trying to work out who it is, and that's so cleverly done. What did you say?
We've all been there.
We have. It's many of our life story. Anyway, but I think it's that I thought was really clever, because it was that's a story very much about obsession. But those two, I think, for me, were the strongest. Whereas the third one, which is a woman who I suppose is reminded by a past when she least expects it, is all you can say.
Yeah.
That one to me jarred, because I couldn't see the connection quite. And I think that's where, I don't know if it was you that said this, Rob, that's where it petered out slightly. And I thought the first two were so strong, and the second two just sort of were slight album fillers, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the first one I actually wavered with a bit, and then it kind of brought it back at the end. Because it's actually quite long for a short story.
It's almost a novella, really, isn't it? I suppose.
Yeah, because it's got so much that actually you do start to expect, because it's about her repeatedly trying to get back to him and find him and be and so on. I think it does lose a bit of momentum, although, as you said, the ending really kind of hits you. But then, so we've had that, which is, quite dark and sad. Then you have the story told in Twilight, which is very hot and passionate, although still obsessive. And then the third one, I think, in comparison with the woman who goes for the break in the mountains and kind of comes across something from her past, is actually quite comic.
I thought it was a bit
light.
twee.
Yeah, but
that was my problem, I think.
If you read that at the beginning and you hadn't just read the first two, I think perhaps it wouldn't seem as much in comparison, but I think maybe it's to do with what's around it. And then the last story, which I was getting muddled up in my head, is very short. I really enjoyed that, because it was almost like just this little sorbet, this little taste of something that was just this tiny little moment, but kind of had so many ripples back into these people's past that you almost just need this tiny bit. And actually there's a F. Scott Fitzgerald story, which we went and heard someone telling aloud just after Christmas, which is a similar thing, that there's a guy who stops at an airport, and it's like near his old hometown, and there's the person that he remembers who he used to love when they were both like 13 or something ridiculous. And then I won't spoil what happens in that story, but something is revealed, which means that it's not quite what he expected. But again, it's quite a short little, or like one scene, but there's so many kind of things that come out of that. So many sort of just like little hints at things. I find that really fascinating. But I can see compared to the other things in the collection, maybe it's just not quite the right tone. Maybe it's not quite the right fit with the other stories.
Do you want to know something interesting, or slightly interesting about these stories? Because if you look at the copyright dates when they were originally written, the last one is written in 1982. The first one's written in 1922. The second one's 1911, and the third one's 1900. So they're written kind of far apart. But he does.
The last one seems like a sort of end of career, because didn't he kill himself with his wife or something?
Oh, I don't know.
Yes, he did. It was an apparent double suicide in 1942. So he can't have written one in 1982.
Oh, the translation must be. First published. So first published dates
First
from not.
published,
Yeah. Sorry, I
then.
apologise.
So
I want to know what Rob's favourite one was, though, and also why he's gone so quiet.
My favourite one was the first one, I think.
That's from an Unknown Woman.
That's from Unknown Woman, yeah. Which is, I suppose, for me, was what I thought I was getting, because I obviously saw the film first, and that's the most familiar. And yeah, I thought that's what started off incredibly strong, and then the letters to what was it, the Twilight?
Story Told in Twilight.
That one was just weirdly off, and so I think I was less comfortable perhaps reading that one, and then I liked the one where the woman went off on her own and went to the pub.
What do you mean by weirdly off, Rob?
The Twilight one. Well, I think it's because I didn't it takes you a while to realise what's happening.
Right.
Did it feel a bit like a fairy tale to you? Perhaps?
I thought that was the most fairy tale.
I did. I wasn't sure where or when it was set, or it just felt sort of. That's why I meant off. So, and I think the first story was quite powerful, quite strong. That then to go into that just felt a bit jarring. That was all. So yeah, for me, Letter from an Unknown Woman was what I thought I was going to get from Zweig, and it's what I got, and I was really impressed. And yeah, just unfortunately, as the book went on, I just didn't like them as much.
Would you read his collected stories if you got like a collection? Would you want to?
I'd read more of his collected stories.
Yeah,
But actual, the whole collected works rather than picking up.
Well, no, because that'd be like a ginormous, massive, ridiculous monster. But I'd like to read more small collections.
Yeah, I mean, looking in the back of it, because the Pushkin
There's
book.
plenty.
There's quite a few Amok and other stories. That sounds good, doesn't it?
Oh, I mean,
there's just simply the collected stories of. There's the Governess and other stories. There's all sorts of it. Wandrak, whatever that is, and other stories.
I like the one I like the books that are called Confusion and Fear. I just want to read those, whether they're short stories or novellas or what.
A chess story.
Chess is supposed to be quite good. But I'm not sure. But personally, I don't think I would, because I just.
Wandrak and other stories, sorry. I can't stop.
I think it's one of those things where you get into an author, like I have the Neil Gaiman thing earlier, and I obviously have the praise for that kind of story. And then you have this, and I'm thinking, he sets, because the first experience of an author kind of sets the tone, doesn't it, ordinarily. And the short story is one of those dangerous beasts where you pick one, and then especially if you start at the start and carry on reading, but sometimes I just pick a random one in the middle. Just because I know that if I
do that. I read them in weird order sometimes, because I know it sounds weird, but why do publishers always seem to put the best one at the front? I don't necessarily think that's in this case.
The best or last.
But so do I. So, but then again, stories are so subjective.
But and that's the thing. I've now got in my head that he will tell me a story of a woman trying to show how. I know it's tragic, and I know she's devoted her life, but at some point nobody intervened. Like there's a scene where she says. My mother just let me sort of look through the door constantly on a stool. She didn't know, my mother didn't know, so I was like standing there like a bit, creepy little doll.
Yeah.
She's like that Annabelle doll, like that film,
But I think it is, some authors you just get, or some authors you don't. I don't think that's a bad thing. For me, I had no expectations with it. If anything, it was slight fear, because I was like, oh my God, this is this author who's so many people whose opinions I trust. be they bloggers or my gran used to love his work, and you know what I mean. And I'm actually now kicking myself because she had loads of his books, and I was like, I don't want to read him, and I've given them to one of my relatives, so I'm quite cross. Although if it's my mother, I'll get them again at some point. Anyway, not wishing that to happen for any time soon. I feel awkward now that I've even brought that up. Anyway,
you can always borrow them. She's still there.
Yeah, that's true. But she doesn't listen. But I think because I was expecting them to be so hard, and I found them really easy to read and also beautifully written, and the fact that, yes, okay, they are a little bit in the line of going to the shops for 90 pages and thinking about your divorce or whatever, but they just had me in some way. But I do think as the collection goes on, it does get weaker for me. It sort of has these two big highlights and then it goes downhill.
I definitely agree with that. I think, kind of almost going right back to what I was thinking at the beginning, that I like the variety of it. I like that there are kind of different styles and different tones, even though there are things that I can see why they've been put together, because I can see where they do link. But I think there's just within 4 stories, there's enough there to make me think that I could easily carry on and read more. And it wouldn't actually be too samey. I think there's a lot there that's going to be varied and lots of different things. And I mean, there's stories that were in kind of, I've heard people talking about that weren't in here that I'm intrigued by. And as you say, I think the prose is beautiful. The description is really beautiful. And I love the way that you're never quite sure if it's the person speaking who's the person in the story, or, you know, I quite like that uncertainty. And, you know, the story told at twilight, I quite like the fact that it felt a bit strange. And
that was, I think, what I liked about that one as well. I think that's interesting that we both liked it for that. And it was the fairy tale element, I think, and a slight weirdness. But speaking of weirdness, I'd easily read more Stefan Zweig over Robert Aikman, for example.
I thought these were more uncanny, if that makes sense. That because of the sort of strangeness of the things that were happening, but you felt that I felt that there was some resolution, and it ticked the boxes that those came close to but didn't tick the Aikman stories.
Yeah.
So there we are. So I think on that note, shall we sort of sum up? So Rob, would you recommend these for a book club, do you think?
I would, actually. There's plenty of variety there. I think it gives you a good taste of what he's like, actually. Yeah.
Gav, would you recommend?
Choose your book club wisely, should we say?
Fair enough. Maybe not for every book club. Simon, what about you?
Yeah, I definitely would, because I think it is, there's a lot to talk about in each short story, but possibly the last one just because it's too short. I get what he's doing with it, but it's just too short. I've got an issue with that one. Has anyone noticed?
No. You never tell your true feelings.
Kate, would you?
Ever.
Yeah, I think I would. I mean, I would definitely recommend Zweig in general. I mean, maybe not these ones, maybe different ones. I don't know. I think there's so many different ones to choose from. But my feeling is, if you know your book club and you know the kind of thing that you're getting, then I think you could almost plump for, you know, almost anything really. And I think it would you probably have enough to talk about. But we've got something else to reveal before we close the episode, which is the books that we're going to be reading for March's Here Read This. So I guess we should reveal the new book first, as that's going to go first in the podcast.
That's my choice. So I think with The Thicket, the way I was thinking of this through is The Thicket, that was me slightly outside my comfort zone, possibly in a genre I'm not used to, so I thought I would stick with that. And I've gone for, we're going to outer space, and it's going to be The Martian by Andy Weir.
Oh.
He's the most famous man on Earth. The problem is he's not on Earth. I've heard lots about this. I've been seeing the paperback everywhere, so I thought, why not give it a go? I think it's being turned into a film as well. So it's always good to read the book before the film.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like we're going back to the beginning, because I get the feeling that's going to be a bit like The Explorer, which was when we first did something
That was
together.
our first ever sort of group chat about things.
No horses, I don't think.
No, I don't think there will be.
Space horse?
Space horse.
If it's talking, you're in trouble.
Comfort
But if it's an insect, I don't mind.
And Simon, I believe you're choosing our classic choice.
I am, and it's a modern classic, and it's one I'm a bit nervous about because I'm bringing one of my favourite authors to hear this, which makes me feel slightly worried. But do you know what? She's alive and possibly scary, so you might not want to mess with her. But I thought we could read I'm the King of the Castle by Susan Hill. Now, I'm slightly worried if any of you have read it.
Nope.
Haven't you read it?
No.
Because it's become a school text, and it says on the back, I didn't want you to come here, so says the note that the boy Edmund Hooper passes to Charles Kingshaw upon his arrival at Warings. But young Kingshaw and his mother have come to live with Hooper and his family and his father in the ugly, isolated Victorian house for good. To Hooper, Kingshaw is an intruder, a boy to be subjectly persecuted, and Kingshaw finds that even the most ordinary object can be turned by Hooper into a source of terror. In Hangwood, their roles are briefly reserved. But Kingshaw knows Hooper will never let him be. Kingshaw cannot win, not in the last resort. He knows it, and so does Hooper. And yet the worst is still to come. And apparently it's really dark.
Thanks for that.
But I'm a bit nervous because I love Susan Hill's writing, but I thought, come on, this is the one that I've been the most nervous of reading.
And you bring it to book club. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so game on. I wasn't gonna. If you thought I was gonna bring Daphne, I'm never bringing Daphne tomorrow to this ever. Because if you all trashed her, I'd just never speak to you all again. So just to put that out there.
Oh, I'm just gonna say anything.
Gav will probably bring one for his classic choice next time, just to rile me. Maybe one of the ones that's set on a boat.
Well, thank you very much, Rob and Simon, for your choices. I'm looking forward to both of those. And yeah, some outer space and some ghostly or scary goings on. It's always good fun as the spring arrives. So yeah, thank you very much, everybody. Well done. And that's goodbye from us. Goodbye from Gav.
Bye.
Bye from Simon.
Bye. See you in March.
And goodbye from Rob, who's off to have his dinner.
Middle of March. Sorry.
Yes, and goodbye
just
from
before
me.
my birthday, roughly, just to say.
Yeah, we'll say happy birthday to you then. See you in March, everybody. Bye.
Bye.